February 27th, 2023 was the last day you could play Platinum Games' Babylon's Fall, which was the newest victim of the always online game as a service model. Seeing how big of a commercial failure it was, it's really hard to blame Square Enix for pulling the plug on it. One can hope that both developer and publisher will learn from this and stop making really stupid decisions chasing trends, but I guess only time will tell. Being a long-time Platinum fan, and thanks to the retailers promising unique steelbook to each pre-order, I actually considered making Babylon's Fall my first PS5 game, so I would have something to play waiting for the premiere of Gran Turismo 7. At first, I dismissed every bad preview thinking, hey, it can't be that bad, but when I heard, quite late, that the game is going to be online only for $70, I've immediately lost any interest and went on with my life. February 27th, or the 3rd of March, which was the official launch for non-deluxe players, came. The game went live and, to surprise of no one, it was just another sad dud in Square Enix catalog. Bullet dodged, $70 saved. Go me. 3 months later, I got it. With Steelbook, of course. For $25. I did it to myself, knowing well enough that it's shit and a waste of my time. And yet, I just couldn't help myself. And look at the Steelbook art. How bland it is. How was the game, you ask? Sincerely, not all that bad, but also the graphics were hideous. The oil painting stylistic, while a nice idea on paper, didn't really help thanks to terrible textures and really bad human models, straight from early 7th gen budget Japanese titles. The story was presented in a such boring, uninteresting way, and the plot itself was pretty much nonsensical. Which was truly a shame, because themes and motives sounded genuinely interesting. After playing 2 or 3 missions, you've basically seen what the whole game had to offer to you. Looting and gearing was utter garbage. Pretty much the only thing that really mattered was gear power level. There were plenty of other stats too, but they had so little effect on the gameplay that you could simply ignore them. A common item with 1 or 2 more power levels was, most of the time, a better choice than a divine item. Divine being the top tier of the gear in this game. Microtransactions straight from mobile or free-to-play games. In a game that you have paid full price on its release, with absolutely pathetic battle pass that offered shitty rewards to the players that didn't want to pay any additional money, and to be honest, paid items were pretty worthless too. But the soundtrack was marvelous, and gameplay wise, well, it wasn't all that bad, honestly. Just imagine a really weird version of Nier Automata. Which actually makes a lot of sense, seeing as Platinum Games started working on this game around the time of Automata's release, probably using many samples of its code. The enemy variety was decent, fights looked flashy, and while really basic, the combat was quite fun, even if enemies felt really damage spongy, and recovering from being knocked down or paralyzed was on the level of getting stunned in a friggin' Monster Hunter game, completely breaking the flow of the combat, frustrating me to no end. I've played for a whole week, doing dailies, collecting login bonuses, watching various numbers grow, finally giving up on it, realizing how pointless playing this game really was. 6 months after Babylon's Fall release, Square Enix announced that game servers will cease their operation in February next year, effectively dooming the game to its death. Nobody really cared, not counting the trophy collectors or achievement hunters. And that's all, folks. The end. Well, sadly not really, because I really hate myself. On January, month before the servers going offline, I had this bright idea to make this video, mainly because I think that every game, no matter how bad, deserves to be played if even one person wants to play it. I also wanted, as a trophy collector, to make a video of me letting go, so to speak, of the platinum chase. To show, mostly to myself, that fully completing a game is a waste of time if the game itself is bad. Yeah, about that. When I first gave up on Babylon's Fall, I was about 1/3 into the main story, about 7 hours into the game. It's truly amazing how slowly the game opens up with its mechanics when you think about how little depth there actually is, and they still had a gall to drip feed you those mechanics. Accessory slots, side quests, upgrading, combining and enchanting your gear, empowered special enemies. Unlocking every mechanic takes about 20 to 25 hours, and even then, gameplay stays basic and feels bare bones. The game through its whole existence was a ghost town. Even crossplay with other platforms didn't really help, though during those last days it was nice seeing the same people every day, till they finally stopped appearing after achieving their platinum trophy, and with it, their freedom. Questing with others didn't change that much. If other player was defeated, you could revive them. There were skills and equipment properties that buffed you when you had your companions nearby, and that's pretty much it. Your choice was to basically suffer alone or share your misery with others by traversing completely uninspired corridors, progressing from obvious arena to next obvious arena till you reached the room where final encounter would take place in. And after defeating that encounter, you could give them likes and they would repay by doing the same. What was the purpose of likes? I don't know. You got a trophy for doing it once and that's all. There were daily quests based on giving and receiving likes, but they were quickly scrapped because of how small the player base already was. Every stage, no matter if it was a story mission, skirmish, side content, basically a story mission without cutscenes and with higher level enemies, gauntlet, side content with additional conditions that made stage a bit harder to complete, or lastly, a siege, side content about fighting wave after wave of enemies, mostly confined to one area, came down to walking through linear level with very obviously telegraphed arenas in between, ending with a boss encounter. Level design felt like it was made by an algorithm instead of a man. There was one word to describe it: uninspired. Sometimes you encountered objects that tried to ruin your day, like exploding barrels, spikes, toxic clouds, pendulums, switch-operated gates, and breakable barriers. But they all failed miserably to make things actually interesting. And all they did was wasting your time or chipping away like 5% of your life bar. Platinum Games made traversal such non-engaging affair that you basically felt like playing on autopilot. Treasure chests and secret areas were placed in such a way that it was easier to find them than to skip them. Through most of the game you would wear ugly, mismatched armor pieces that made you look like a total clown, but late game you could find equipment that actually looked kinda cool, especially legendary and divine pieces. Then again, after a mission or two, you had to change it for something trashy, because, as we all know, equipment power level is king. That little number decided on your drops. If you used gear with higher power level, the next time, even if you did one of the starting missions, you got gear with the same or bigger numbers. Yeah, that's right, you could grind same level over and over again and get better gear, because bad game design, I guess. If you got enough materials, you could craft and upgrade your gear. But seeing how easily your gear became obsolete, sometimes after just one 5-minute quest, there was little point to it, not counting trophies and weekly quests associated with gear modding. The main combat gimmick was the ability to equip 4 weapons, one as your basic fairly speedy attack, one as your heavy attack, and also 2 spectral weapons, which were your main source of damage, and also, just like your dodges, consumed stamina. And check this out, using spectral weapons was really fun! It felt genuinely satisfying. Each weapon type felt different. With some bows, for example, you could play the game like a third-person shooter, with the ability to score additional damage when you hit enemy weak spots. While standard enemies could get damage spongy, especially if you forgot about regularly changing your equipment, enemy waves composition was mostly puzzling and uninteresting. Get those shits away from me! What have I done to you to deserve this? Anyway, boss fights were good, definitely my favorite part of the game. They just worked, even if some of their moves were completely bullshit and a bitch to dodge effectively. And the music. Oh, the music! Just take a while and listen yourself. Such a waste of potential. That's what saddens me the most. Babylon's Fall could be a great game. Spectacle fighter in which you could face hordes of enemies or battle bosses alone or with a group. Whether co-op would be drop in, drop out, or within special areas or challenges made for multiplayer. All that in an interesting, cleverly designed world based on Mesopotamian civilization. Just exploring a huge ziggurat, fighting your way through it, without shitty itemization and monetization, without all that online-only bullshit. Platinum. Square. It could have been great, but it wasn't. When I got back to playing Babylon's Fall in January, I wrote a short angry review to my best friend. At its end, I said, Babylon's Fall is like a game that you would see in a TV series or a movie. When you look at it from a distance, it looks like a game. But if you take a closer look, it's just a prop made by people that don't actually play video games. I still think it's an accurate summation of this game. So, what's the final rating, you ask? Babylon's Fall gets nothing, because it doesn't really exist anymore. But what would be my final rating if Babylon's Fall was still functional? I would give it a thumbs down. Nice try, Platinum. Please don't do anything like this again. Please.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say